2019 Formula 1 season might be over, but the rumour mill never stops. And the latest speculation and big story in Formula 1 at the moment is a potential move, a shock move for Lewis Hamilton to Ferrari. I'm joined by Autosport's F1 guru Scott Mitchell, who's wearing a very special shirt to end the season. And the first question to him is obviously, where have these rumours come from and why have they flared up now?
We've had a few links between Hamilton and Ferrari they probably predate me being in Formula 1, to be honest, but certainly over the last 12 months or so there's always been this link. Earlier this year, I think it was in Spain, Mercedes boss Toto Wolff revealed that when they negotiated the latest Hamilton-Mercedes contract, the potential and the appeal of a move to Ferrari came up in their conversation. I'm sure from Lewis's point of view it's probably as a bit of a negotiating tactic, because if the guys next door that are desperately trying to beat you want to sign me, maybe you should give me a bit more cash. But Toto is also a very honest operator, and he knows that he's not dumb. He knows that driving for a team like Ferrari will appeal. It doesn't matter if that Mercedes is always finishing in first spot and the Ferrari is stuck behind the number 2 board in championship terms and in terms of races. Ferrari's just special. So it never seems to go away, but the reason it's been revived now is that it's a combination of a report in Italy, where else, that Hamilton has met the Ferrari's Uber chief John Elkann a couple of times through the 2019 season. I don't personally think that that's massively relevant, because people meet all the time. F1 loves to create strange bedfellows. So, but the fact that it's John Elkann, it is significant. And then over the course of the Abu Dhabi weekend, Ferrari team boss Mattia Binotto was asked about it. He called Hamilton an outstanding driver and said it can only make us happy that he's out of contract for 2021. Basically, all of the top-line drivers are out of contract after next year, so it's really anybody's guess what kind of amazing driver market we might find. So you've just got all these factors that just sort of seem to come into play at the same time. Ferrari talked it up a little bit, didn't really do anything to dampen the flames. Toto Wolff again talked about it being a possibility. So all these things just came together, and it just meant that even though the last race of the season was a bit damp on track, we had this quite fiery story brewing in the background of it.
Why would Hamilton leave? He's been the most successful driver in Formula 1 since he moved to Mercedes, and Mercedes has been the most successful team. So why on earth would he move at this point and jeopardise that?
It would seem kind of stupid of Hamilton to do it, but I guess you could argue that people said the same when he left McLaren for Mercedes. It's all about what the medium term is. It's not just about short term stuff. It would be short sighted of Lewis to look at it and think, well, we've smashed these guys for the last 6 years, they're never going to get good again. They're not going to think like that, and Wolff is very wary of underestimating that Ferrari might turn it around. I think the fact that Hamilton's had so much success with Mercedes is one thing, and we'll get onto that in a minute, but just as I said before, Ferrari has this appeal. I think Hamilton privately sees Ferrari as the only team other than Mercedes he might drive for in F1. If he decided to leave Mercedes, I think it would be to Ferrari. Whether that actually happens or not, again, we'll get into shortly, but don't forget that Hamilton at the moment, now he's got his 6th title in the bag, he's gunning for Michael Schumacher's outright record, 7 titles. He may well get that with Mercedes next year, but he might not. Either way, if he decides to leave and go to Ferrari, he's got the chance of either matching Schumacher's record in a Ferrari or beating it in a Ferrari. And if he goes there as a 7-time champion, it means that Ferrari won't have won a title since 2008. Hamilton could go there, make himself the outright most successful driver in F1 history, and be the guy to end Ferrari's title drought, doing what Sebastian Vettel couldn't do, doing what young gun superstar Charles Leclerc couldn't do, in theory. So it's just that chance to not only to just carve yourself out an even bigger slice of F1 history, to do it in the most famous team and do what everybody else has failed to do in the last 11 years. Fernando Alonso couldn't do it, now Vettel's failed to do it. There's just so much superstar appeal to that, and just doing it in the famous red of Ferrari, I just think would be I feel like it would be the ultimate way for Hamilton to cap his career, even though it's already been massively impressive.
One thing is for certain, it would be one of the biggest shocks in Formula 1 driver market history if Hamilton did make that move. Scott, how likely is this? Is this a load of speculation being played up by the media, i.e. you, or is this something that could actually happen and is a really serious possibility for the future? Yeah,
well, guilty as charged. We love this story, and obviously we're not just going to ignore it. I think the factors that make it significant to me are, if Hamilton has met Elkann, that is significant. I know I said that people meet all the time, but you don't really just sort of bump into the. I think Elkann's the president of Ferrari because they split Marchioni's roles, and now you've got Camilleri and Elkann basically running the show. You don't bump into either of those guys by accident. So if that's true, there is something there. The other element is Wolff has talked about it very much in open terms of we know that this is a risk. So Wolff's put it as 75% likely that Hamilton stays at Mercedes, which obviously I'm brilliant at mathematics. 25% chance that he goes, and it's basically Mercedes or Ferrari. I don't really think Lewis walks away from F1 at the end of 2021. He might do at the end of 2020. Sorry, he might do if he's not totally sold on the 2021 cars. He gets the 7th title and he just thinks, "No, I'm good with that." Whether or not that 25% actually gets into anything bigger will depend on how well Ferrari starts the 2020 season, whether Toto Wolff is indicating he's going to leave Mercedes. If there's any signs that the Mercedes empire is going to crumble, all the more reason for Hamilton to go. Whether or not, I think Wolff might be playing to the driver market a little bit by saying it's 75% chance. All signs point to Hamilton staying with Mercedes. He's won. It's crazy. I think it's something like 63 wins from 60 and 62 poles, or one or the other. It's 62 and 63, which is basically he's just won a stupid number of races and scored a stupid number of pole positions. The only person who's won more with a single manufacturer is Schumacher. He's won 5 of the last 6 drivers' titles. Mercedes has just swept up everything on offer in the V6 turbo hybrid era. He's got it made for him at Mercedes. The only way that changes is if Ferrari can prove that they are finally in a position to actually challenge Mercedes, or they offer him an insane amount of money and Lewis just goes, yeah, I can do this for a year or two. My money at the moment would be on Hamilton to stay with Mercedes, but I'm loving the fact that we're going into the winter, even with this being a tiny possibility that he might jump ship and go to Ferrari.
We've seen Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc seem to have a good relationship, and they've both said complimentary stuff about each other this season. Charles Leclerc's first season at Ferrari, so they've been fighting against each other on track for the first time. Scott, is there room for Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari, and do you think he would fit in well there?
The simple fact is that the reason that Hamilton's potentially available for 2021 is because this is when most of the contracts run out, and Sebastian Vettel is among those that we know needs to do a new deal. He wants to stay with Ferrari beyond 2020. Leclerc's future is a little bit less clear because he was under contract at Ferrari when he was a Ferrari Driver Academy guy, sweeping to GP3 and Formula 2 titles, and then when he came into F1 with Sauber, that was as a Ferrari guy. So it depends on the nature of his multi-year deal, basically. I don't think we don't explicitly know one way or another whether Leclerc is available, but I think we can put him in the sort of, he's probably the future of Ferrari. So I don't think it's Leclerc that moves aside. It's whether Vettel vacates his seat by choice, he chooses not to renew, or Ferrari goes, no, you make too many mistakes, Leclerc's the future, but we can have a short-term boost by getting Hamilton in for 2 years, while also massively hurting Mercedes because you take away the star asset, and then Lewis can come in. I'm sure him and Leclerc would have a properly tasty rivalry within that team because they're both class operators. You'd have the young gun, rising star up against the wily old fox, basically, and it would just be a fascinating dynamic. I think Hamilton would be up for it. He doesn't shirk away from a fight. I think Leclerc would be up for it because he's also massively up for a fight, but he also knows it's his team longer term. Lewis is just going to be there for a year or two. So I think there's room there for him. It depends what Ferrari wants to do, but the ultimate deciding factor is going to be whether or not Hamilton decides he wants to jump ship.
And what about Mercedes? Because they've got George Russell and Esteban Ocon obviously contracted to Renault and Williams respectively, but also kind of still connected to Mercedes and have been juniors of that team. So is there any interest in Mercedes? Obviously they're not going to be happy to lose Hamilton, but they've got that young blood coming through, and it's an opportunity for them to establish someone like Charles Leclerc in their team to give them a bit of a future boost. Potentially,
and Wolff has talked a little bit about when Nico Rosberg retired at the end of 2016. That was a massive blow to the team because they'd lost the world champion, but they also saw it as an opportunity of, right, how do we bring someone new in? And they've obviously gone from strength to strength because the Valtteri Bottas-Hamilton dynamic is much better than the Hamilton-Rosberg one. And they've brought a good driver into the fold and made him a multiple Grand Prix winner, which is really cool. And you've got the likes of George Russell. You've got Ocon, who he's a fully fledged Renault driver, but he's managed by Wolff and Mercedes. So it's a bit of a weird one there. I think someone like George Russell has a lot to prove before he can become a team leader at Mercedes. Bottas isn't really the sort of absolute top-class operator you really want to rely on as a number one. I think if you lost Hamilton, Mercedes move heaven and earth to get Max Verstappen in, personally. So Hamilton leaves and it just triggers this amazing snowball of moves. So that's the potential to be really cool. But the priority for Mercedes is to maintain the status quo. There's a reason they've won so many titles. Hamilton's been absolutely key to that. So I think desperate might be a bit of a strong word, but I think they are going to be absolutely dead set on keeping him.